Okay. Beitzah, Perek Bet, Mishnah Zayin. So, the previous Mishnah, we learned about three things that Rabban Gamliel was machmir like the house of Shammai. He was stringent like the house of Shammai, and this was what he said. And we said machmir doesn't mean that this is the law necessarily. It means that he took upon himself extra stringencies, but when he says the halacha, that's the way we learned it. Biur Mishnah Zayin. כיוון שלמדנו משנה הקודמת, so since we learned things that רבן גמליאל was stringent, שרבן גמליאל היה מחמיר בשעת דברים כדברי בית שמאי, like the house of בית שמאי, מביאה משנתנו לשעת דברים שהיו רבן גמליאל מקל בהם וחולק על דברי חכמים. Now we're going to see three things that רבן גמליאל was even more lenient than the sages. The sages says this, and רבן גמליאל says, no, it's okay to do even more than that. Let's see. אף הוא רבן גמליאל אמר שלושה דברים להקל. Said three things to become lenient. ואלו הם. And these are the three things. Number one, okay, this needs an introduction. You have to remember that the floors in their houses wasn't like modern floors today. It wasn't tile, it wasn't carpet, it wasn't wood, it was earth. Yeah? It was dirt, yeah. That's the way it was. So when it comes to dirt, there's a ruling that you're not allowed to dig holes in dirt on Shabbat or Yom Tov, because it's like a melacha of farming, whatever it is. And there's also the same thing as if you're not allowed to dig the hole, you're not allowed to cover the hole. So therefore, you're not allowed to sweep the house on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Because if you sweep the house, you've got holes in the floor, and you fill them up. Yeah, and you're going to fill them up, and it looks like a melacha. Yeah, so that's it. So, this is what Rabban Gamliel said. He says, maybe you're not allowed to sweep the whole house, but the small area next to your beds, next to your chairs, next to your area, the small area, right, where your living space is, he says, mechabdin ben amitot. Between the furnitures, like between the furnitures, maybe not the whole hallway, but between the furnitures, you're allowed to sweep, to clean. You ate a little bit, something, go ahead, sweep, it's fine. שהיו רגילים להסב בסעודה למיטות. Like we learned that they didn't have tables over there, they used to eat while laying down. וסובר רבן גמליאל says, שמותר לטאטא ביום טוב את פירורי האוכל שנפלו בין המיטות. The dirt, of the table, so-called, you're allowed to sweep on יום טוב. שכן חכמים אסרו לטאטא את הבית בשבת וביום טוב. The sage says you're not allowed to. Why? גזרה שמא ישווה גומות. It's a decree, because if there's going to be a hole, you're going to fill it. And that's not allowed. והרי זה כבונה. It's like you're preparing the floor, you're making a floor. You're building a new floor now. אבל רבן גמליאל סובר, but רבן גמליאל holds, שאין לאסור אלא בתיעתו הבית כולו. It says it's true, the entire house, I'm not going to let you, but a little bit of dirt around the tables, that you're allowed to. אבל בין המיטות, הואיל וזה מקום מועט, but between the beds, since it's a small place, ומטאטאים שם כל יום, and not only it's a small place, you do it every day. The whole house you don't do every day. This you do every day. שלא יהווה עליה אבק למסובים. Why do you sweep it? So it's not going to be dirty, it's not going to be dusty. מן הסתם אין שם גומות. So it says, we're going to assume that there's not going to be holes over there. The entire house you might have holes. Over there you're not, because you do it every day. ולכן מותר לטאטא שם משום כבוד סעודת יום טוב. Therefore you're allowed to sweep over there. ברם, חכמים אוסרים לטאטא גם בין המיטות, שלא יבוא לטאטא כל הבית. The sage says, no, once we let you sweep the house, you're going to start sweeping the house. You're going to say, okay, it's a little bit more, and there's no end. Once we let you, we can't. So we're not going to let you even that. Okay. Number 2. So that's the first thing. Second thing, מניחים את המוגמר ביום טוב. So, in those times, they had incense, like spices, that you used to burn. You used to put on the fire, to give good smell in the house. So it says, are you allowed to, on Yom Tov, we already said, you're allowed to warm your house, right? מתוך שזה, since I'm allowed to cook, the sage says, you're also allowed to warm, you're also allowed to put water for bathing, and so on and so forth, right? Since, because it's so it's also for smell now. So it says, maybe you're allowed to put the spices on the fire so that it's going to be a good smell. Once you're allowed to use the fire, I'm allowed to use the fire. Yeah? That's what you would think. Now, the sages say you're not allowed to. We'll have to understand why. It looks like, hey, you had the rule. Once you're allowed to use, you're allowed to use. So, but the only one that allows to do the spices is only Rabban Shimon Gamliel. So it says, why does he allow and the Chachamim doesn't allow? Let's see. Nohagim hayu leaniach levona. They used to have a custom to put the kind of spice al gechalim on the coals כדי להעלות למסובעים ריח נעים של הבשמים, so that people are going to have the good smell. עשן הבשמים מעלו עם הגחלים נקרא מוגמר, and this smoke used to be called מוגמר. והתיר רבן גמליאל לעשות כן אף ביום טוב. רבן גמליאל said, you're allowed to do it in יום טוב, משום שיש בזה הנעת הגוף. It says because it's for enjoyment, right? Like bathing, this is also, it's enjoyment for the body. והרי זה כצורך אוכל נפש שמותר ביום טוב. It is similar. You said enjoyment is permitted, so this is enjoyment permitted. אבל חכמים אסורים להניח את המוגמר ביום טוב, but the sages says you're not allowed to. Why? Because the sages says smell is not enjoyment for the body. It's enjoyment for the neshama. That's right. Yeah. מאחר שאינו צורך, but they over here say, the Gemara is not going to say your reasoning. It says for a different reasoning. It says the Gemara says when you say enjoyment of the body, it means for everybody, not just for snowflakes. You know, you have snowflakes that are they need it exactly. It needs to be this one and this one. It says when we say enjoyment for the body, we mean for the majority of the people. If some people are snowflakes, they need, they're mefunakim, it's called. It's called like people who are there. That's not called enjoyment for the body. You don't need. You're a snowflake. You mefunak. You too. Yeah. מאחר שאינו צורך השווה לכל נפש. Because it says, not everybody uses it. שאין נזקקים למוגמר אלא עשירים ומפונקים. It says, who needs this? So you can't call this אוכל נפש. אוכל נפש is equal by everybody. Over here, not everybody has music playing while they're dining. Not everybody has good smells while they're dining. Maybe, 2% of the population. Yeah, that's not 2% of the population are not called tzorich nefesh. Or anashim sherechem ra. Or some people that need it, that they stink. They need, their house stinks. They need something like this. Okay. So that's the second thing. The sages said not, we understand why, and he said yes. Another thing, this has to do with Pesach, coming up. ועושים גדי מקולס בלילי פסחים. And also you're going to do a gdi, a goat mekulas, in Erev Pesach. Now you have to remember this is not in the time of the temple. And we learned Psachim already. You remember when we learned Psachim at the time of the temple, how would you bring Korban Pesach? You will put the head, the body, the insides, you remember the fat through it. He's allowing it to do this kind of cooking Erev Pesach. He allows the people to do it even though there's no Beit HaMikdash. In other words, they're not doing it for a sacrifice.
They're doing it to eat.
They're doing it to eat.
They're doing it the same way they did it.
Because it says, look, we don't have the temple. Why shouldn't we eat it? It's even better because we're remembering the way we used to eat it. It's not going to be forgotten how to do it this way.
And why not?
Okay, we'll see. We'll see soon. Gedi mekulas. What's a gedi mekulas? Hainu gdishu kolot salui. It means that you roast the whole thing. Rosho al kra'av ve'al kirbo. Like we said over there in Psachim, if you remember. It was like 1, 2, 3. Ubnei me'av tluim lo chutza lo. And the inside were hung outside. Kederch shayu tzulim et Korban Pesach b'Yerushalayim. He allows them to do it the way they used to do Korban Pesach, the sacrifice of Pesach in Yerushalayim. Mekulas, mefaresh Rambam. The Rambam explained what's mekulas. Mechubad. Mekulas means the good one, like the quality AAA. That's mekulas. V'yesh mefarshim, there are those who explains, לפי שהמעיים היו תלויים ככובע על גוף הגדי. It's like the innards were on top of the body of the goat. ונראה כגיבור שנשקו עליו. It looks like a warrior. שכן כובע נחושת, כתוב בגוליה. It's like he had a hat out of steel, out of נחושת, out of copper. שמואל, תרגומו וקולס. And over there it means וקולס. קולס means it looks fancy. מקולס means fancy. That's what it means. Either fancy because of war, fancy because it's fancy. וסובר רבן גמליאל שעושים גדי מקולס בליל חג הפסח, אף בזמן הזה, זה חלק קורבן הפסח, רבן גמליאל says, even we don't have the temple, we should do it. Why? It's a remembrance for the temple. And the sages, what do they say? וחכמים אוסרים. And the sages says, you're wrong. רבן גמליאל. בכל שלושת הדברים הללו, in all these three things, בשני הדברים הראשונים, כמו שביארנו הטעם למעלה, the two things, we already explained why they think not, וגדי מקולס, and this, what's the problem? Why don't they like us? משום שנראה כאילו אוכל קודשים בחוץ. It says, if you're going to let them do it, people are going to think that you shechted it as it's a Pesach sacrifice. And because it's a Pesach sacrifice, that's why it is this way. And this is the reason, והלכה כרבי חכמים, הלכה כחכמים. Pesach is coming out, and interestingly enough, we still keep the chachamim. You see how careful. On the Seder plate, we bring a korban chagiga. You remember what's korban chagiga? What do we bring?
Yeah, that's for the extra meat.
But what do we bring on the Seder plate? What's the korban chagiga on the Seder plate? Do you remember?
Oh, where it is?
What is it?
Oh, I think it's zroa, no?
Zroa is Pesach.
Is what you're talking about? Not the Pesach? What you're talking
Chagiga, we bring an egg. You remember there's the egg?
for Chagiga, to remember.
But why do we bring an egg, halachically? Why not meat? You can make a sheep for korban chagiga.
אני יודע you bring egg לזכר לקורבן.
That's no. The reason we bring an egg because the Chachamim says you're not allowed to bring sheep. You're not allowed to put meat on it. Why? Because people are going to think you shechted an animal, chagiga, even though there's no temple. So therefore, it's not, you can't even bring a meat over there. Because if you bring meat, what will people think? That you're sacrificing without a temple. That is actually a sacrifice. And you went and you reinstituted that you're allowed to sacrifice in your own backyard. And it says, that's why we're going to make sure, don't even put meat. And even the Korban Pesach, if you notice, what do? We burn it, so that it's not ra'ui la'achila, and we make sure to take everything off the bone. All the meat off the bone. Why? So that people are not going to think we shechted something to bring it down. And this is exactly to go against what Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says. We go out of the way, like the Chachamim, to show that it wasn't a sacrifice. He says make it to look like a sacrifice, but they're going to tell him, you're crazy. If we make it like a sacrifice, people are going to think that you're allowed to sacrifice outside of the temple. So we're going to make sure everybody remembers. Everybody remembers the temple. How? By not having meat on Pesach.
But then in the Yom Tov, people do al-Esh.
You can do an Esh, it's not on the Pesach Seder, not as a symbol. Yeah. Because if it becomes the symbol, that's the problem. Okay.